Well, good evening. We're so
Good evening.
fired up about tonight. I tell you, it's just so exciting to be with you guys, to share it in the blender with Brandon and Madeline Hyman. And I tell you, you just don't want to miss one moment of tonight's episode. This weekend is a very special weekend for me. This marks 21 years. This weekend will mark 21 years as my first date with my beautiful wife. We went out on Memorial Day 1997. That was our first date. It was a setup. Her sister said we three were going out, and then she backed out. And so she set us up. And so I am so thrilled 21 years later to still be sitting beside her. And we were sitting like this in the movies. You were sitting to my left, I think. I don't know. It was 21 years ago, but I know you've been sitting beside me.
21 years ago. I don't remember.
I remember what you was wearing, though.
Okay.
Yeah, you had on those blue Levi jeans and some white Reebok Classics. Mm-hmm. And you had on a orange, like polo type shirt.
No, it was like a sweater type.
Like, yeah, sweater shirt. I remember that much. And so you could tell I am just so happy, so thrilled this weekend, because every Memorial Day weekend is just a super special weekend for me, just bringing back memories of how we first got together. And so, listen, we're just thrilled, we're overflowing, we're bubbling over, just excited about what's transpiring in our lives and in the lives of those that follow us within the blender with Brandon and Madeline Hyman. So we're going to jump right in to tonight's episode. So let's start with some statistics.
The children of divorce tended to do well if mothers and father, regardless of remarriage, resume parenting roles, putting differences aside and allowing the children continuing relationships with both parents.
Mm-hmm.
Most children are doing reasonably well within 2 years of the divorce. Most young adults from divorce are establishing careers and building meaningful lives.
That's good.
As a blended family continues to become more prevalent, additional blended family statistics will become available. Since blended family numbers will continue to rise in the future as families divorce and remarry, it is important to study this family structure to learn the best ways to help those who are members of a blended family.
So the first statistic says the children of divorce tend to do well if mothers and fathers, regardless, now listen to this, regardless of remarriage, resume parenting roles, putting differences aside. So it's important, guys, that as you go into this blended family, that you resume your roles. Mm-hmm. Don't just let this dynamic or this transition be separate apart from your role as a parent. You have to resume your role as a parent because children need what's called normality. They need that. They need some sense of a normal structure in their life. Mm-hmm. Divorce is devastating as it is. Separation is devastating as it is. Moving on and remarrying can be devastating to a degree to children. Mm-hmm. And so they need some sense of normalcy in their life so that they know that things are okay. When you don't present them with your roles being intact and in order, what you tell them is that their role isn't intact and in order. And consequently, they'll live out a disorderly life because you aren't presenting to them what they need to see. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to resume your parenting roles, putting differences aside. I don't care what reason you're no longer together. I don't care what reason you're no longer married or what reason you moved on. You have to put those differences to the side for the sake of the children. Mm-hmm. Too many times I found out that the adults, or we as adults, we put ourselves ahead of the children. We put what we feel is important to us over top of what's important to them. And consequently, we wind up losing them in the shuffle because they have no place in what we're doing. And so it's important to put those differences aside and allow the children to continue a relationship with both parents. So one thing I loved about my wife was, regardless of her circumstances or situation, she never prohibited the girls from seeing their father.
Right.
She never stopped them from spending weekends or summertime or holidays or whatever they wanted to do. She never stopped that. If something didn't happen, it wasn't because of her. It may have been because just a situation arose where it just couldn't happen. But it wasn't because she stepped in and stopped allowing their father to be their father.
Right.
Then it says most children are doing reasonably well within 2 years of the divorce. And that's important to understand, because although it can seem sometimes devastating or harmful or hurtful or whatever, know that there is a better resolution or resolve coming out of it. And so most children, they're doing reasonably well within 2 years. Then the next one says most young adults from divorce are establishing careers and building meaningful lives. And this is important to understand, because they're already learning within the blended family how to navigate some things.
Right.
And so as it relates to careers, now they can navigate even their career life, because they've already navigated and handled their personal life. They've already learned how to handle 2 home situations or 2 different parent sets, or whatever the dynamic could be. They've already learned how to do those things. So when it comes to them going out into the career or the workforce, that's easy for them, or it's not as hard as it is for those that don't know how to multitask or navigate around different systems.
Right.
And then the last one was, as the blended family continues to become more prevalent, which it is, every day there are thousands upon thousands of people entering into the blended family. So as the blended family continues to become more prevalent, additional blended family statistics will become available. That's why we try to give you guys statistics every week. But understand something, statistics are constantly changing.
Yeah.
And so we can give you a stat today. That doesn't mean that that's going to be the same stat tomorrow.
Yep.
Because they're constantly changing, because this dynamic is growing. The blended family has now surpassed the traditional family.
Yeah.
The blended family has now surpassed the traditional family, which means there's a whole bunch of statistics that's about to come out, a whole bunch of information that's about to come out that's going to blow our minds as it relates to the blended family, the dynamics of the blended family, and what we're doing as a blended family. And since the blended family numbers will continue to rise in the future as families divorce and remarry, it's important to study this family structure to learn the best ways to help those who are members of the blended family. So it's important to study. What assisted us in our maturation was we began to study. We began to study the blended family. And we didn't have to look far, because we had blended families within our family. And so as we begin to study them, as we begin to study those that we knew, as we begin to read more books and more articles and things of that nature, we begin to build ourselves up to the degree that we were beginning to help others.
Right.
And I'm talking about within a matter of a year, we were dealing with other families and other couples and other blended families. And so it's important, guys, that as these dynamics change, pay close attention, study, get as much information, as much understanding, as much revelation as you can, because I promise you, you're going to be assisting others as it relates to this blended family.
Yep.
And so tonight we're going to talk about, because again, this is 21 years of us being together and 20 years as a blended family. So we're going to talk about stability in the blended family. It's important. You can't get 21 years. You can't get 20 years without any stability.
Right.
Now, you may, let me say this, you may acquire it, but it's not going to be successful. You may acquire it, but it's not going to be profitable. It's not going to be blessed.
What you mean?
What I mean is, there are people that's just in relationship and they just stay there. They're not going anywhere. They're not going to get a divorce, but they're not really together.
Okay.
They're not really, everybody's doing their own thing. There's no family continuity. There's no unity as it relates to their family. They're just there. So we're talking about stability because it's important to establish stability because you're not going to be able to grow and mature and bless without stability. Okay. And so we're going to talk about stability in the blended family. What's the first key, sweetie?
Family stability isn't contingent on whether you live in a first marriage, blended marriage, or a single parent family, but more particularly on the environment that the parents create for their kids, such as an atmosphere of regularity. You had kind of mentioned that earlier.
Because that's key. Family stability isn't contingent on whether you live in the first marriage, or that's the traditional marriage, the blended marriage, which we are, or single parent family, which you were. But more particularly on the environment that the parents create for their kids, such as an atmosphere of regularity.
Right.
So it's important, guys, to understand this. We're dealing with the blended family, but as a family as a whole, it doesn't matter. Stability isn't contingent on you just being a family. It's contingent on a sense of regularity. It's contingent on a sense of things being normal. Not always out of place, not always hit and miss, but a sense of, I'll give you a great example. As far as I can remember, whenever I finish work, unless I know my wife is asleep, what's going to happen, sweetheart?
What?
As far as I can remember, when I finish working, unless I know you are asleep, what do I do? You looking like...
Because I don't know where you're trying to... I don't know. What?
It's one thing that I do. I'm always doing.
I know you do a whole lot. Oh, on the phone? Call?
Yes.
Oh, I'm like, huh?
Yes. That's one thing I always do, though. Something that I always do. Keyword always.
But you didn't say like the whole thing to...
No, I said, as far as I can remember.
Right.
As long as we've been together.
Right.
When I'm finished working, there's one thing that something that I always do unless I know you're sleeping.
Are you talking about call me?
I always call.
But that ain't just when you finish working. You call me all day long, and you've always done that.
I know, but I was just using finish working as something that's some regularity.
Well, you should have just said something that you do all the time.
No, I do a lot of stuff all the time, but that's one particular thing that I will do. And so, but again, and my family knows that. Right. My children know that. My grandchildren know that. Everybody knows that I'm going to make that phone call. Why? Because that's something that I put in place to let her know that you can depend on this. You don't have to worry about, okay, I wonder if he's off yet. I wonder what's going on. You know, when I'm off, you're going to get a phone call. The only time she doesn't get a phone call is if she sleep. And I know she sleep because I know her pattern. I know her bedtime. And so the family works off of that regularity. Everybody knows those things. They know how we function. They know how we flow. The girls, they know don't call past a certain time. 'Cause watch this. Everything centers around her sleeping.
Yeah, it would center around yours too. Now that you get up as early as I do,
I still don't go to bed that early.
Okay, well that's you.
But it still centers around it, and so it's important, guys, that I don't care what that. Yes, you're gonna get your hours. I don't care what that family dynamic is, and she counts them. You have to present the kids with an atmosphere of regularity. What's the next one, sweetie?
Use the proper navigational system. If a blended parent is always battling with his or her ex, research shows that the children suffer. But if he or she is close to the ex, the new spouse may feel anxious and insecure. To top that off, the child may not view the blended parents as a real parent for the first few years, if ever, and parents in the second marriage may treat their biological children differently from their blended children.
So this second point is chock full of stuff.
Yeah,
the first one is use the proper navigational system. You have to use the proper navigation system. And watch this. You have to know when one navigation system needs to be changed or adjusted or needs to be ignored for another navigation system. I'll give you a great example. I do a lot of driving. And sometimes when I'm driving, I use the navigation system that I have on my phone. But there are times when I know that what the navigation system is telling me on the phone isn't the right way to go. Then there are times when I'm driving and I may think I know the right way against what the navigation system is telling me, but Holy Spirit may tell me you need to make this turn. And so I have to be sensitive enough to hear even what Holy Spirit is telling me while I'm listening to my own navigation system, or I'm looking at the navigation system on my phone, because Holy Spirit knows what's best.
Right.
And he could be telling me turn right because there's an accident up ahead, or turn left because there's a bunch of traffic, or go straight instead of turning because traffic just opened up, but the system isn't telling me so.
Right.
And so even in a blended family, there are times when you can be going a certain way and you could be doing a certain thing. You have to be sensitive enough to know when to look at which navigation system and when to refer or prefer to another.
Okay.
I know that's a lot, but break it down. You have to get the two. You have to rewatch this so you can play it slowly to get an understanding. Then it says, if a blended parent is always battling with his or her ex, research shows that the child or children suffer.
Right.
But if he or she is close to the ex, the new spouse may feel anxious and insecure. And so again, it's a couple different dynamics in there. Because the first part says that if they're battling, then the children suffer.
For the children, yeah. Right.
The children suffer. And I remember early on in our marriage, we were battling. We were bumping heads. We were trying to get on the same page, the same accord. And watch this. The children suffered because I didn't have enough sense to fall in line. I didn't have enough sense to come underneath this system and listen to what I needed to listen to in order to get out of it what I wanted to get out of it. And consequently, my girls suffered early on because they didn't see that peace they should have seen or that stability that they should have seen. But then on the other hand, if you're close to that ex-spouse or that that biological parent, the new spouse may feel anxious and insecure. And I love the fact that we dealt with that. And what I mean by dealt with that was we made sure early on that we weren't going to have to deal with that.
Right.
We made sure early on that we knew where each other stood as related to the other parents and as our relationship related to the other parents. So there was no insecurities as it was between me and you.
Right.
I didn't have to worry about, her secretly seeing the girl's father, or she didn't have to worry about me secretly seeing my son's mother.
Right.
Because we already established where we were as far as that relationship goes. And although we all were cordial, we still kept it to a degree where there was no questions as relates to the relationship.
Right.
But again, that's that navigational system. Because sometimes when you're dealing with the ex or the biological parent, you got to know when to, Kenny Rogers said it like this, you got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. You got to know when to walk away. You got to know when to run. Then he got kind of a little funny with it. He said, you never count your money when you're sitting at the table, because there'll be time enough to count it when the deal is done. So what do all that got to do with it? You got to know when to be close. You got to know when not to be close. You got to know that would be super cordial. You got to know when to be a little bit off, when to be in the back up. You got to know when to show your hand. You got to know when not to show your hand. Because there's going to be time enough for all of that at a particular time or at the destined time.
Right.
And so, but you got to know when that time is. And so that's important. Then also it says, to top it off, the child may not view the blended parent as a real parent for the first few years, if ever.
Yeah. In some cases.
In some cases, if ever.
Like, accepted.
Yeah. And I love the fact of even where we're at in our family dynamic, because I'm the girl's real dad. Although they know their real dad, although they know their real dad is their real dad, I'm still their real dad. Mm-hmm. And I'm not treated any differently.
Right.
Now, we got to work on the name thing, and I know we talked about that before. We got to work on the name thing because, it's 21 years now. I'm working on getting a new name with them, but they know who their father is. Right. There's no question to them who that gentleman is. That's me. But if ever, and parents in the second marriage may treat their biological children differently from their blended children, and that's big. That's huge. I've seen it. We've seen it over and over again. When you become one, those are your children. Yeah. There's no stepchildren or blended children or bonus children. Those are your children. Those are yours. You now assume responsibility. You now assume the covering role as relates to their growth. The Bible says children are like arrows in the hands of the parent. We shoot them in the direction they should go. So guess what? You're going to shoot that child the same way you would your biological child. Why? Because you want the best for them. You don't see it no differently. And so, but that comes from maturity. Right. That comes from understanding. And so you want to make sure that that's what's being done.
But I like the term bonus, though. Because that's just like at your job. If you're working and they give you a bonus, you happy about that. It's like an addition. Like a good addition.
Okay. You said you happy about that. I don't have a problem.
I mean,
with
no,
it.
I'm saying okay. Like if you're using bonus and then stepchild, okay, you're gonna look at it a little bit different. A stepchild, it's already like a negative kind of how do I say? It already sounds negative.
Correct.
To a degree. So when you're talking negative or stepchild and then bonus sound a whole lot better than step.
It do, but I'm like my pastor. If I adopt a child, that's not my bonus child. That's my child.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just saying.
No, I know, but I'm not debating it as relates to what you're saying. I'm just coming from my point of view and my position on it.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. Now, if you are a parent,
no, some people
I'm saying if you're a parent and you use bonus, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if that's what you want to use. I'm just speaking from my perspective. My point of view is that
as far as the difference,
goes, the treatment goes, or even as the perception goes,
should be the same regardless of what term is being used.
Correct. But I'm just saying, as far as the perspective goes, that child is my child.
Right.
So that's the only point that I was making it in. Because I don't want to get nobody off on terminology, because sometimes folks get off on terminology. At the end of the day, it's still a child. At the end of that, it's a child. And at the end of that, you're still a parent.
Right.
And so that's what's most important. What's the next one, sweetie?
Build a strong marital bond because it will benefit everyone.
Build a strong marital bond because it will benefit everyone. That is paramount. One of the things the most important thing that we sought to do early on was build a strong marital bond. A lot of other things we didn't make it, or we was missing the mark on. But as far as building that strong marital bond, yes, we put the work in for that. Because you know why? Because what that strong marital bond did was it allowed grace to prevail against all the mistakes that we made. Mm-hmm. Because regardless of what transpired or what happened, we still was there for each other. We still had each other back. Even though some things was disappointing, even though some things we felt individually may have felt like a letdown, or, like it could have been somewhat hurtful, because our marital bond was so strong, we were able to push through any and everything that we dealt with. So much so that quickly it was almost as if we didn't even go through the stuff that we went through, because the bond was so strong. Even family members looked at us like, wow, how did y'all make it through that? How did y'all overcome that? How did y'all bounce back so fast? Because we love to have the strong marital bond that we have.
Right.
One thing that we do, and we still do, is we love spending time with each other. I think I may love spending time a little bit more.
Probably so.
Probably so.
Because I got friends.
Singing up there,
got
friends.
people that I be just spending time with
No, she
sometimes.
don't. No, she don't.
You don't have no friends.
You don't got no
I
friends.
got plenty of friends.
Name one. See, teach it on.
No, David, you ain't give me a chance. I don't want to start naming them because I might miss one. And then somebody be like, you ain't say my name on there.
Because she ain't got no friends.
That's a lie.
Yeah.
That's a lie.
Her friends call her sleepy, drowsy,
That's a
droopy.
lie. No, I like my sleep, but sleep ain't my friend.
Sleep your man?
Get back to the lesson.
Okay. All right. But it's important, guys, to build a strong marital bond. I mean, there are things that you can do strongly, or you can be more successful in if the marital bond is there. If that strong marital bond is there. And so it's important to build that strong marital bond. Then it says, work with a therapist.
Who are specifically trained in blended families.
Work with a therapist.
Because there's some out there.
Yes. And let me say this. This is the Mental Health Awareness Month. And so there's nothing, you have to deal with that stigma, guys. Therapists are for your benefit.
Right.
They're for our benefit. There's some things that you're not going to be able to overcome. There's some things that you're not going to understand without getting professional help.
Mm-hmm.
When your back hurting, you don't have no problem with going to the therapist. When your neck is hurting, you don't have no problem with going to the therapist. When your head is hurting, you have no problem with going to the therapist. When your mouth is hurting, you have no problem with going to the therapist. Who is that therapist? That's the dentist.
Mm-hmm.
You have no problem with going to people that are specialists in most cases. But when it comes to you, when it comes to your family, when it comes to self-preservation and self-building, then now we look at therapists in a whole nother light. When in actuality, they have the same function. That's to make you better. Right. That's to make that situation better than what it was before you saw them. And so it's important, guys. We encourage you, work with a therapist. Work with somebody that's going to be there, that's going to help guide and instruct you, that knows what they're talking about. I'm not talking about your auntie now who bitter because, no, that's real. You have to say that.
A real therapist?
No, I'm saying your auntie now. I'm not talking about them. I'm not talking about your family. I'm not talking about your friends who are bitter because their relationships didn't work. Now they got a bunch of advice to give you. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about people who are successful, people who are trained, people who are educated in what they do to assist you in being who you need to be and get all you need to get from this. And so that's important. What's the next one, sweet?
758.
Oh, wow. Give me the next one real quick.
It's too long to read.
Rituals can act like glue that hold a family together.
We got a whole lot in that one.
Rituals can act like glue that holds the family together. So that's what we're going to come back to. Rituals can act like glue that can hold a family together. Let's mark that off, sweet. Listen, guys, I'm just, again, bubbling over. I try to contain myself when I'm up here. But this is the 21st Memorial Day weekend that we've had together. This is the weekend that we first got together. This is the weekend that I first went on a date. Was it a date?
I don't know. Was it?
No,
it was a church outing.
No, the movies.
Well, that was, afterwards.
Yeah. I'm not talking about the church outing.
Well, that's how it started.
Well, no.
We went bowling.
Yeah, but we didn't go bowling together. We went bowling.
Well, that's how that's how it started.
Oh, you was digging me at the bowling alley?
Oh my goodness. Can we read this final thought?
I'm just trying to find out because you're never truthful about stuff. I can't.
You always
21 years later,
stuff.
I can't get the truth out of her yet about this. How we got together.
You like to add stuff.
I just want to know the truth. Bible says you should know the truth.
Truth is, we went to the bowling alley, and then after the bowling alley,
I'm tired.
Okay, go to sleep. All right, let's read our final thought. You start.
No, so listen, if you have any questions, any comments, anything you want to know, especially about us in 21 years as a blended family, how do they reach us?
Email us at weareablendedfamily@gmail.com.
One more time, sweetie.
weareablendedfamily@gmail.com.
Listen, our
Also,
website.
You know the website?
Go ahead, tell them.
No, you tell it because I want to know if you know it. You know it?
Truth is...
In the blenderministries.com.
Give it to them one more time.
In the blenderministries.com.
Yes, that's our website.
God.
So you can go check it out. It's exciting. We're adding stuff to it all the time. It's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be a blessing to you guys. So we thank you for sharing In the Blender with Brandon and Madeline Hyman with us. Final thought for tonight is always remember that every family is different and may have different challenges. So every blended family challenge should be addressed individually depending upon the challenge.
The personalities are different, so you want to use what measures work for you.
One of the main things that you should always do is keep the lines of communication open in the blended family.
Parents should always show unity in front of the children, even if they
Hey,
secretly
Darlene.
don't agree with each other.
Showing that you are unified diffuses the enemy's attacks in the blended family.
Lastly, you want to always demonstrate patience.
Having patience to work through the difficult challenges in the blended family will bring about a happy blended family.
Remember, you became a blended family because you chose to.
Now choose to be successful. We love you guys, and until next week, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.